Nope.
Here we go. We're live.
Oh,
Okay.
it's one of those nights. It's not gonna come up on the screen, but hey,
Yeah. Oh, okay.
but
Here we go.
there it is.
Here we go. We are live, Charles. Aloha
Yeah.
Friday, everybody. Aloha Friday.
Yes. 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 Aloha, everyone. It's Aloha Friday. It's the what? The sixth today. The Aloha Saturday. Aloha Saturday the sixth. Aloha, everyone. You got Charlie
uh,
on the left, and hopefully, how's your day, brother? How's your day?
it was pretty cool, man. We stayed home in the morning, took care of some stuff, water my garden. Actually was doing some cleaning, and then it was so hot, so we jumped in the car and went riding to the west side, man. To we didn't go as far as your neck of the woods, but went to Hanapepe and grabbed some lunch from Wong's. We
All
love
right.
Wong's. I love Wong's. I mean, they get really good food, and they're just good people. And was so we had some fun. We just had relax and
You saw
went
Jackie?
down. I saw Jackie and her beautiful little
Solana.
daughter,
Oh,
and her two nieces are here from Oahu, hanging out here for the summer, and had some good food and drove down. We just did drive around, man. Went down Koloa. Bro, how's it? So we're driving down Koloa. Coming down Malohia, turn left on Koloa, heading towards Koloa town, turn right on the road that goes to the neighborhood center.
yeah,
There's where the old coffee shop used to be. There's a candle shop right there.
yeah, right in the corner.
There's this gentleman standing up on the railing because there's a line for waiting to go in. There's a gentleman standing on a porch wearing a mask with "Don't Be a Doodle Boy" shirt.
Right on.
I had to stop and said, "Oh, nice shirt." And he said, "Yeah, you got to know somebody or something to get one, something like that." I should have took a picture, but there was traffic at the intersection, and I never like stopped traffic for take a picture. But that was pretty cool, man. That was pretty cool. But we went down, we went Port Allen, we went, down to the harbor,
Hmm.
just drive around, enjoy the air conditioning in the truck. Yeah, so it was pretty cool. It was just relaxing.
Oh, that's good.
We'll do
That's
the
good.
same thing tomorrow. Maybe we're gonna not show up tomorrow. Uh,
Well,
and
I wanted to kind of wanted to talk, and hopefully the viewers will get 56 of them on right now. Aloha no to all of you. Thank you for joining us. Usually I'll type in a little caption there thanking you all, but I kind of wanted to talk about this, get your read on it. The two things happening. You know, I understand everyone has their rights to freedom of speech, voice their opinion, right? But when you see these marches that's going on here on Kauai, on Oahu, I think we were talking about it. And yeah, you're right. When you have this pandemic and they stress on us so much that you gotta practice social distancing, wear your mask, to the point that you disrupt your child's graduation. You cannot allow them, we cannot have one regular graduation because we have to practice social distancing, right? It's a somber moment. It's quiet. Everyone's excited, right? You would think people would practice a social distancing. But no, the DOE and the state didn't even give families a chance to let their child enjoy a regular graduation. Because you only graduate one time from high school, unless you just never make it, right? And then all of a sudden, you get these marches going on. Social distancing is a thing of the past. They neck to neck, back to back, whatever. Some of them wearing masks, some of them not wearing masks. Nobody gives a damn what happens. So I am not complaining about the ones who get infected. I am just complaining of the matter. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. And I think you would have more responsible people at a graduation than at one protest. They would understand. We're gonna let your child graduate. You guys all can come, but you gotta practice social distancing. I'm pretty sure people are gonna adhere to that because they love their child, right? But now we're protesting, boy. You just go there. It's like, hey, you know what? We're going to suspend all rules. So that means that we who've been following the law, if it's a governor's proclamation that say we got to wear a mask, we got to practice social distancing, we've been following it for the last 2 months since it happened.
3
months, okay, since it happened. And then all of a sudden, bingo, we get this protesting going on, and everybody just one big clutter. I don't know.
Well, and let me reiterate what you said earlier about the fact that the right to protest, the right to freedom of speech, no one is going to disagree that what happened to that person at the hands of the officers was right.
Right.
And I encourage people, believe me, when Patsy and I went up Rice Street, we saw young, old, black, white, brown, yellow, everybody was at the protest. That's a wonderful thing. When the county and the state and the country can come together to peacefully demonstrate, peacefully show their their concern and their care. So that's not the argument, Charlie, and we both agree with that. That's not the argument. The argument is, why do we allow the exemption or the violation? It's not even an exemption, it's the violation of the rules for this incident. Because you can still protest 6 feet apart. You can still protest wearing a mask. The virus don't give a shit if you are protesting or having a graduation party or having a garage party at the beach with your friends and family having a cookout. The virus don't care the difference. So what message are we sending to the kids? I remember my high school graduation, and I think most people do. And we deprive these kids of a graduation. We deprive the families of having a graduation party. Even though we're adults and we're responsible, we can make sure that we practice the safety measures regarding the masks or the social distancing. That is what's unfair, because like you said, Charlie, in this whole event, it seems like the law-abiding people get punished. And I'm not talking just on Kauai. I mean, at least 1,000 people on the county park today on along Rice Street. From what I understand, in Ala Moana Beach, over 5,000 people, maybe more. I don't know, but that's just what I heard. But is that okay? So what's going to happen? I'll tell you what I would do right now. If I had a child that graduated, I tell you right now, Charlie, I would be planning a party. I would be planning a party for my child and his friends or her friends and family. And we would still honor the social distancing simply because that's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. But this whole thing with 10 or less or 12 or less people, you cannot congregate, you cannot do all of this. We saw thousands today. Thousands, and it was okay. It was allowed. And so that's what I would do. I would definitely see. I still worry about the virus. I still do. And we cannot be, Angie saying 2,000 on a wall. I saw a post that was over 5,000. I don't know the number. I didn't count them. But whether it's 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, my point is this, is our kids, our families got denied the opportunity to have a party or to have a celebration, even a small one. You cannot tell me that I'm just use Kauai High School because they utilize the Vidina Stadium. If you allowed every student to bring their immediate family, and that immediate family would have to be 6 feet away from the next kid's immediate family. You had enough room to accommodate that school, and you had enough room to allow the kids to walk across that stage and get their diploma, practicing the 6-foot rule, and they would have enjoyed that important time of their life. No, that was taken away because of the virus, because of the seriousness of the virus. And then that kid that is driving up Rice Street today or passing Ala Moana Beach on Oahu is wondering, wow, wow. So that's all. It's you said it right, Charlie. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. Um, I'm it's just disappointing, you know. Again, if you allow these types of exemptions, and it's not even an expressed exemption because no one came out and said you could. Everyone said, you know, we welcome the protesting as long as you practice the safe
Well,
distancing.
here's another thing that's is bothersome too. You know, there's some, reading some comments that are coming through. Get some of those who still feel, overreaction, whatever. You know, I will tell that person, whatever. But remember this now. The state's been bragging. We've been lucky. Okay. We showed that we went beyond the quarantine period, at least 2 cycles. And we went beyond the incubation period, 2 cycles, okay, with 0. The other counties cannot say that. So for the last couple of days, 3 days in a row, not counting today and yesterday, they're all happy 0. It just so happens 2 days back to back, 9 and 9. Small population, but 9 one day, 9 the other day. That's an indication right there. To me, that's an indication, right? That it's not travel related. 1, 2, we have a community spread. 3, they don't have a handle on the contact tracing. That's what it's telling me. So we got to see what today has born tomorrow and see how it plays out. And all I can tell the people, if you're watching, I'm not a doctor, but you heard, we brought the doctors on and you heard what they said. If we start seeing the numbers going, and as big or as small as a spike may be, it's a spike. And that's what you got to worry about. That's what you have to worry about. Okay? Because if you're not worried about a spike, if you can shake this thing off, fine. Hey, good for you. I applaud you. But you look at how big Samoan brother, the one after 7 weeks, he wasn't able to shake this thing off. It was almost as if he was right next to the sauce and he went swallow a whole gallon of COVID. It took brother 7 weeks to get rid of that. And the reason why he's not joining us, and we respect the family's right, because we told them, they said when he feels better, because he's still on a breathing apparatus at home. That was part of the treatment. Okay. They brought him off the ventilator, but he still needs to breathe at home and to rebuild his lungs because it did a lot of damage. And we respect that and we pray that he continues to heal. And just like what's that other brother, the boy named Cody, right? The bartender from he's another one that's going to have to, you know, take a while. But I just want to get it out to the people that, you know, because we live in an area that the numbers are so small, you take it for granted. I can just tell you right now, I get some friends that are watching us tonight. In fact, they just text me right now. They say, Charlie, Austin, Texas, go look at the numbers today in Austin, Texas. It's been one of the highest since the pandemic started in the state of Texas. So the person is telling me, I hope they heed your warnings. That's the only reason why I'm saying something, because a person texted me. Okay, the person, not texted, but private message me. I'm reading it right here. So I don't know. We try our best, but because the purpose is we get the information out, you use it, fine. You don't use it, fine too. We give it to you. That's what we do.
Mean, it's just common sense. And by the way, tonight we do have Dr. Kapono Chong-Hanssen, and I just texted him. He got the link. I'm not sure where he's at, but he'll be coming on shortly, and he'll be able to address some of these concerns. And again, you know, people will maybe misconstrue what we're trying to say, and I hope not, because it isn't of any. Has nothing to do about whether you're protesting or partying or whatever it is. And it's just how do you rationalize allowing this huge group? And someone just posted 1,300 today in Honolulu Bay on a peace paddle out. It's a beautiful sight. It's a wonderful sight, and the beach was packed. The beach was just packed to the gills. And I did see some pictures. I saw some video earlier. It didn't look like it was that many people, but that was very early in the morning. And I'm sure as the day went on, more people came out. But how do you rationalize that? How do you explain that? If you have a child that just graduated, what do you tell them?
Mhm.
That's the struggle, that's the struggle. And it is what it is. And I think politics plays a role in it. I think, but to me, and I seen some people at that event today that I know personally that were very vocal against visitors congregating or people congregating, but they were there. And I think that's where I understand maybe they feel this was worth the risk. But you see, the thing is, and we talked about this, Charlie, if you're a adventurous person, a risk taker, and I consider myself somewhat of a adventurous risk taking person, was a lot more riskier when I was younger, but you take risks that affect yourself, that's fine. But in this pandemic, the risk is everyone else. You see, by you violating the rules, you put others at risk. And I think that is the difference between what we saw today. So anyway, Dr. Kapono Chong-Hanssen is in the building, and I hear the doorknob, and I see his phone is, there we go. Oh,
All
there we
right.
go. All right. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I gotta tell you, Charlie, it's the second doctor in a couple of days that look like they like just Powell High School. These guys, they grow them young nowadays. These doctors, these local doctors, they grow them super young.
You know, I
No,
ended up looking up Dr. O'Carroll after you guys' last show, and I guess we went to the same school. We both went to USC Medical School, but he must have started right after me. He's a little younger than me.
Yeah, I swear he's 17. He tried to tell us that he was 35, but I think he's 17 years old. But anyway, Doc, thank you for joining us. I'm Mel. Nice to meet you
Good to meet
virtually.
you too. Yeah.
And of course, Uncle Charlie up there on the screen.
Yeah, I don't see him on my screen, but how's it, Uncle Charlie?
how you doing? Oh, you
there,
cannot.
now I see him. Okay.
There you go. How you doing, Kapono?
Good, good.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are so fortunate tonight to have. Well, first of all, I gotta tell you, he's an amazing soccer coach. If you didn't know, Mel, he took you folks took the States, right? From Waimea, took the Waimea team to the States.
Yeah, we were fortunate enough to go to States twice, and it had been quite a while before we did that. So, yeah, it was some nice success for us.
Yeah. So I wanted everybody to know that I've known this doctor since meeting you at KVMH, as well as you coming out to Kalaheo Steak and Ribs, taking some of the. And from that point on, you've helped a lot in the community, and then that's what this is all about. It's a community base that we can get the information out there, and that's the reason why I wanted to bring you on. It wasn't as if it was a private practice, but you can tell us about Hola Hui and how you reach these people in the community that utilize your services. So I wanted the viewers to get a feel that we do have health clinics, community health clinics on the island. If they didn't know, that's the main thrust. So why don't you take it away? Because as Mel would say, he would always say, you've got this whole hour to you, and we'll chime in. We'll start screening the questions as they come through, but kind of give us a background of who you are, what you do, what you specialize in, if you do have a specialty, and we'll take it from there.
Sure.
And real quick, guys, gals, our followers and our viewers, now is the time to hit the share button. Hit the share button, start the watch party. Let's get this thing out viral. Dr. Kapono is going to have some very informative information. And Doc, before we came on, we were talking about obviously COVID. It's a COVID show, and we talked about the social distancing and the failure to wear masks at all of the protests all over the country. So if you can chime in on that at some point, but we appreciate you here, and share with us what you do and what you guys are doing during this time of this pandemic.
Of course. Yeah. Well, aloha kako. Just want to say a lot to everybody out there. And thank you again for having me. Like Uncle Charlie mentioned, we kind of crossed paths at my favorite stomping grounds, Kalaheo Steak and Ribs. And he plays with one of my favorite Kauai bands. And actually, he was supposed to be playing at my baby luau, but we had to cancel that or delay it because of the pandemic. And then Stephanie, his wife, was really close with another coach that I coached with, Mark Kennett, who's kind of like a legend in the west side of Kauai for soccer, at least. But I think pretty much all of Kauai knows him. And, he just passed this past year, but he dedicated, a lot of time to Waimea High School and soccer too. But we crossed our paths that way, and Stephanie helped us out with several things during the high school coaching season. One of the biggest ones, she helped us get new laundry machines for Wailua High School, who hosted us for our preseason tournament. So it was really nice working together with those people. I guess to give you a little bit of my background, I grew up in Iowa. My father's from Iowa. My mother's from Honolulu. Most of my mother's side of the family is from Big Island, Kona side. So if you know any Kamakaos, that's pretty much all my family. And we're all descendants from the Hawaiian historian S.M. Kamakau. Of course, we think he's the greatest Hawaiian historian. But I just mentioned that because, even though I grew up in the mainland, I always, my Hawaiian side of the family instilled a pretty strong sense of kuleana to try to do what we can for our people. And so that's part of how I ended up where I am. I played soccer all growing up. Soccer kind of helped me get to college, where I went to Dartmouth College in New Hampshire and played soccer there. I majored in anthropology, so that's sort of my kind of interest on the side outside of medicine. So I've always been interested in culture and Hawaii. Growing up in the mainland and then kind of going to Hawaii was a good experience, seeing all the different cultures and how things are different, how things are similar. And I kind of tried to use that kind of knowledge to apply to my practice too. So yeah, I finished up Dartmouth. I actually did a thesis on luau. So I connected with a lot of people. I got grant money to basically go to luau's all the time. And my classmate at Dartmouth was Kapua Medeiros, who's from Anahola. And she's the doctor at Kaiser now. So, the two of us we kind of joked about it when we were undergrad that, maybe we'll end up on Kauai. You can take the east side, I'll take the west side or something like that. And it kind of played out that way in the end. And then another person I crossed paths with was Keao Neesmith, who's from Kekaha, and he's a scholar mostly with Native Hawaiian language and Pacific Island studies. And he sort of made a name for himself translating The Hobbit and Harry Potter into Hawaiian, which is a pretty interesting project to me too. So that's kind of the connections that got me to Kauai. Right out of undergrad, I was looking for opportunities in healthcare, particularly in communities with Native Hawaiians. And then Ho'ola was hiring, and kind of just fell into place. And I lived here from 2003 to 2005 while I was applying to medical school, worked for Ho'ola. And then I applied for the Native Hawaiian Health Scholarship, which I was lucky enough to attain. And so I went to USC Med School in Los Angeles and sort of always had the plan that I would come back and work for Ho'ola. And that's what happened. So I did my med school at USC Keck School of Medicine, 2005 to 2009, went to UH Family Medicine residency on Oahu, 2009 to 2012. And then I moved over here then. Started working for Ho'ola, and then I became the medical director 2 years ago. So that's the position that I'm in right now. Our organization overall, we're Ho'ola Lahui Hawaii is the umbrella organization, but we're also Kauai Community Health Center. And the reason why we have those two names is we get two federal grants. The Ho'ola Lahui Hawaii part is the Native Hawaiian grant. Native Hawaiian Healthcare Improvement Act created this system with Papa'ololokahi, which is the overarching organization on Oahu, and we're the satellite organization for the island of Kauai. And then to be able to provide more direct clinical care, we became a community health center too, which gets us another federal grant. And so with those grants, it allows us to provide pretty wide services and spend more time with our patients is probably the end result. If you don't know about community health centers, they're federally qualified community health centers. About 13% of the United States population gets their primary care from community health centers. We're unique in the sense that we essentially can't turn patients away. So we accept all insurance, and we're thought of as a safety net for people who are uninsured. So if you don't know what to do or how to get healthcare and you need it, community health center is a good place to start. And we can use some of our funding to get social work, case managers to help out. But we also have dental services, behavioral health services. We have a department called Hui Ho'ola Mai Ka'i, which offers mostly fitness, exercise programs. We have a nutritionist services as well. So we're serving the Kauai the best we can. We have clinics in Waimea, KVMH. We have in Lihue, and then we also have in Kapa'a behind Mahelona. So those are our clinical locations. So yeah, I started being the medical director 2 years ago. And then, from that position is sort of how I got more involved with COVID-19 on Kauai once this happened. And I'm definitely, happy to talk some about that. I've appreciated your show. I've sort of, knowing that you guys asked me to come on, I started watching some of the episodes, particularly like Josh Green and Scott Miskovich came on, and Dr. O'Carroll. I saw Ed Case last night. So it's really nice that you guys kind of have this casual, frank atmosphere, but a lot of good information comes out. But I'm not sure if you've had anybody who's been on Kauai talking about the reality of how some of these policies play out and what our resources are here. So I was hoping to kind of fill in some of those gaps maybe and explain to people what we're trying to do here to try to protect the community of Kauai in particular. So we can definitely touch on that.
Well, that's why we have you on there, Kapono. I think you're that good fit. Because we are viewership, and a lot of people know we have a diverse group, especially with the numbers that we have tonight, and it'll span throughout the states and throughout the state of Hawaii itself. But I think there's a lot on tonight here from Kauai, and then maybe you can fill that gap. You might want to go into that if you can right now, please.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So the first thing is, when this all happened, I kind of started wanting more information, and I think Uncle Charlie, I expressed some frustration to you about, I wanted to know more about the cases because pretty quickly the DOH sort of started saying, okay, well the doctors are going to order the test. We're not going to be the gatekeepers of the test anymore. I guess I should start it off like this. The first case that I had, a patient presenting to my clinic where I was concerned about COVID, that was March 2nd. And a person had come back from Taiwan and was presenting with flu-like symptoms. And I knew he was not he's not a complainer. He's kind of like the kind of guy who doesn't come in unless he's really sick. So he came in and it was kind of like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden maybe it's here. And so I called the DOH and asked them, I think I should test this guy. And think a lot of doctors probably got at the time is we're not testing these guys. We're waiting until they have pneumonia. And I kind of was like, well, it doesn't start with pneumonia, right? I mean, and I would rather test him before he gets bad and goes to the hospital. So, it kind of started off with, I think, some of the frustrations I've heard from your viewers and you guys, like, well, why can't we test? Why can't we test more? So I had that experience. The guy didn't get tested, but I think in the end, it's unlikely that he had COVID-19. But that was kind of my first experience. Then throughout the month of March, I remember it was March 13th, I think was the first case on Kauai. And that was my son's first birthday, actually. So I always remember Friday the 13th, 2020 was, kind of like the day that the pandemic really hit home for me personally. And I think for the island of Kauai. So from there, I started trying to keep on top of the cases. And I think like a lot of people, it was hard to get good information. There's a lot of information, but it was hard to know what to trust and where it was coming from, what to do from there. And then a friend of mine, her name is Dr. Dang. She practices in Big Island, and she had been working with Dr. Miskovich. So I sort of heard what they were doing over there and the numbers that they were stating. But we quickly were just trying to get together how many supplies we have, how many test kits do we have, how much PPE do we have so that we could even sample a person. And then quickly met with KVMH leadership, try to come up with screening protocols outside the hospital and in the clinics. I did bring a test kit, and I thought I might. I'm not sure if anybody has shown you guys the test kits, but this is the test kit for. This is called a PCR test. So this is the test that tests for active disease It's not the antibody test that you probably have heard about, the blood test. So this is the one that we swab. It's called a nasopharyngeal swab. And I think you guys have mentioned before, it's deep. It feels uncomfortable, like they're tickling your brainstem, kind of. But I did want to show, this is the swab. I'm not sure if there's enough detail you can see. It's pretty thin, but you can see that it's long, and that's basically what we swab people with. And then this is the test tube with the media. So these two things are the things that were in short supply, and still sort of are in short supply. I mean, they're getting more, but we were kind of like, oh, how many do we have? We participate in the state's Sentinel surveillance program for influenza. So it's the same testing kit for influenza testing. So we started, looking for all of those, and we're like, okay, we have, 20 something. Okay, so we were counting in those kind of numbers about how many tests we could actually potentially even run. How are we going to do it? Where are we going to put the people? What's the flow going to be? So we started just kind of talking about all those things. As cases started emerging on Kauai, I remember there was a news story in the Garden Island, and it stated community spread, which is a big deal in the world of pandemics. Community spread sort of means that, okay, now the disease is not just coming from other places, it's being spread on the island of Kauai. And so I reached out to the district health office. Dr. Janet Berriman is the head over there. And we've been working together on other projects, but most recently, I think you guys might have heard about this. There was some events about climate change. They wanted to talk about climate change and how it can affect health, and I guess other things on Kauai. So I reached out to her and kind of was like, I'm trying to, sift through the Garden Island newspaper to find out what's going on. Can you just tell us? Like, shouldn't the clinicians on Kauai just kind of hear from the horse's mouth or hear from the public health authorities about what's going on, since we're going to be the ones taking the test or ordering the test? So from there, she was receptive. I was being a little bit critical, and I think, to her credit, she listened to me, and she explained why they weren't giving more information than what they were giving. But I think it really just made us both realize that we needed to make a hui of the medical leadership on the island. So we pretty quickly pulled in the leadership from HHSC, so KVMH and Mahilona, so Graham Chilius, Ron Fujimoto, who's Dennis's brother, actually, who's going to he actually works at United Healthcare now, but he's going to be stepping in as the chief medical officer over there. And then Amy Corliss and Jerry Young. Amy Corliss is with Wilcox, and Jerry Young is the medical director for Kauai Medical Clinics, so they're outpatient clinics. Thomas Royer is the acting chief medical officer, but he's in Texas, so he was acting chief medical officer for KVMH. And since then, our group, Jesse Lamb has joined it. He's a private practice pediatrician, I think in Kapa'a. So he was interested. And so basically we have this hui going. We meet every Thursday morning, 7 o'clock, we have a conference call, and we talk about what we're doing. We throw out the ideas of, where we should go. I mostly deal with the outpatient world. I'm not really working in the hospital very often. I rarely do any of that work, but each one of the people in that hui kind of brings a different level of expertise and is involved with a different organization. So kind of one of the big things that I was, trying to monitor was testing supplies. When it first happened, we started getting calls from other doctors. Well, what are you testing? What are you testing for? We're all worried that we're going to over test and just exhaust the limited supplies we had in the beginning and not have testing supplies left over for the critical patients. So we followed it every week, how much testing supplies. So it started off with, less than 100, and then it was 100, and then it became 400, became 600. And that's kind of where we are recently, about 600 test kits available on the island. I think we've been lucky that leadership at HHSC and HPH, which is Wilcox, they've been receptive to collaboration. And I think we're lucky we have all those sites for the drive-throughs. They got up pretty quickly, so once that happened, we didn't have to worry so much about whether we had the PPE to run the test. And it was easier for all of us to keep those kind of patients, the suspected COVID patients, away from our clinics, away from our hospitals, unless they were critically ill, of course, to get tested. And then we could focus on our regular patients who have other medical conditions. And I think we felt like our primary role was to keep those people away from the ERs, away from the urgent care where they could potentially be exposed and spread more in the community. So that's the first thing I wanted to get out there. You know, if you guys aren't aware, you know, we have a group of leadership medical leadership on the island, and we're all trying to think strategically about how to protect the island best. One of the things we've recently been working on is getting testing on the island. So when it first started, the tests were all in the mainland. And so the turnaround time was longer, 5 days, maybe sometimes 7 days. And then we were able to run tests on Oahu. So that got quicker, you know, a day or two results. And now the next thing that we're looking at is, can we use some of the funding that we're getting? Because we're a federal community health center. We had funding sort of sent down our way. The thing was, a lot of the things we want to get are not, you know, they're in short supply everywhere. So it's not like we can just buy PPE, you know, buy all the masks that we need. They're just not available sometimes. So the most recent thing we're working on is getting the analysis on the island. So if everything works out in the next few months, Wilcox hopefully will be able to have their own analyzer that would run 12 tests with results in 2 hours, and KVMH, if everything works out, they would be able to run 8 tests and the results should be in 40 minutes. So that's the thing I'm most excited about right now, and hopeful that everything falls into place for that. But it just takes collaboration and effort to kind of move those things along. So yeah, that was the biggest thing for me. Did you guys have any questions about that?
No?
I think the biggest question, and again, you know, it's evolved quite a bit since, but I think the largest number of complaints that we were getting were from people who were not being tested, who felt that they were possibly, remember in the beginning, the Department of Health originally said that asymptomatic people couldn't spread the disease or the virus. That soon changed, and then it was basically what the requirements to get a test was so strict. You pretty much needed to be in, and Dr. Anderson said it on the press conference that we're only testing people that we believe are positive. So I think the largest number of complaints we've been getting over the last few months was that people aren't getting tested, and we're still getting those complaints. Even people that came in contact with symptomatic or positive COVID patients were still not being tested, and I think that was one of the concerns that we all had. And I'm not sure that has really been resolved to the extent that the state is saying it has. Sure.
Yeah, my first thing I wanted to get out there, because I've seen, you know, comments from your viewers about that too, is that if you got if the answer was no earlier, it might not be the same answer now, or if we get a second surge, because the supplies are better now. You know, and once we, you know, like in this group, once we realize that, okay, we're not depleting our supplies, we're able to maintain, then Dr. Berryman put out guidance relaxing, you know, the criteria for testing. We're still not in the place where we're planning to test completely asymptomatic people. But I think like Dr. Miskovich said, and you hinted at, close contacts, if it happens again, I think that is what we're going to be doing, is testing those people. I had one patient who was tested at urgent care, and her husband had tested positive, and she was in the household with him in quarantine. So that she had been tested in urgent care, and it brought up, you know, in our group, it brought up an example that, you know, I brought to Dr. Berryman. The problem, well, not necessarily a problem, but what happened with that patient, she was tested about 5 days into the quarantine and she was negative. Well, you know, she's still sharing this household, even though they're not trying to have close contact. And she's supposed to quarantine as well for another 14 days. So it probably would have made more sense to test her towards the end of the quarantine once the husband was in the clear, you know, to make sure she's in the clear. So my point there is that I think it's something that probably would be done now and should be done, but it needs to be done, you know, intelligently. And I think in collaboration with the Department of Health, or at least our district health office, you know, helps to kind of guide those decisions and use it in a smart way. So like her test, I wouldn't say it was a complete waste, but it kind of, you know, it reassured at that time, but she still could have ended quarantine and gone out in the community and spread it. So I think that's where we started talking about maybe towards the end of quarantine would be a better time to test that patient. I hear a lot of talk about these asymptomatic patients, and I did want to point out that I think it's probably more clear to use the term that Dr. O'Carroll used. I think he said pre-symptomatic. I think that's a little bit more accurate. My understanding of the study that they did about asymptomatic patients was that, yes, they tested positive while asymptomatic, but I think 24 out of 27 of those patients did develop symptoms. And I just mentioned that in the sense that it could be possible, but it's unlikely that we have like a typhoid Mary out there who's completely asymptomatic and is just exposing people. So I did want to point that out. One thing that was reminded of earlier was, I think, Mel, you've expressed some frustration about why do the numbers keep changing? Like why do you take them away and then add them back? And I did ask, directly about that to Dr. Berryman, and it has to do with the reliability of tests, especially at the beginning of the outbreak. They were being sent to the mainland, and some of them, I guess, they felt they weren't reliable. So I think they're reanalyzing some of those tests and recategorizing people based on those results.
So let me ask you, with regards to that explanation by Dr. Berryman, what bar is used right now to determine whether tests are reliable or not? Because if we didn't have anything to compare with, we would have never caught on to the testing procedure, right?
Right.
So what are we using that's different now to say, okay, now we got the bar set this high, we know we got to meet this threshold. If not, that means the test is not performing the way it's supposed to. Because up until that time, you could basically say that Hawaii was naked. We had nothing to compare it to, because that kind of goes side by side with the fact that, some people are right and we need more testing, But I think what you've mentioned, and I can see the point, the testing prior is all based on supplies. We don't have enough supplies, sorry, we cannot do the testing. But then when can we get the supplies in to cover the community itself that needs to be tested? I guess that's the question. Right.
Well, the test kits are improving. The availability overall is improving. But, they were talking about, the Department of Health was talking about trying to use a 3D printer to make those swabs, and trying to make their own reagent. But I know at one point they were concerned that the reagent, sorry, I might technically be misspeaking. It might not actually be called a reagent. But anyway, the tube is, they were able to make it, but it needed to be refrigerated before doing the test, which everyone felt was iffy, because it's going to give you invalid tests if it's not refrigerated, and we're not used to refrigerating them. We're used to the other ones. So people have tried to address those supplies. I think you probably heard, I think Josh Green threw out about 5,000 a day is probably what our capacity is now. I know clinical labs tells me they're able to do 2,000 a day right now. So I think 5,000 probably comes from clinical labs, DLS, diagnostic labs, and then probably the Department of Health's ability to test. So that's where we are, as a state, which is a lot. But I think when you start to put the numbers together about reopening tourism, then it's not that much. I think you guys heard the figures of, we're talking about, let's see, June is supposed to be 900,000 tourists. Is it like a typical month for Hawaii?
Right.
So you break that down. If we had regular tourism and they weren't able to test beforehand, and I know Dr. Miskovich even talked about doing maybe 5 days after arrival. It doesn't sound like we have those numbers, and if we were using all those testing ability on tourists, then we have nothing left for our own people either. So as much as we have a lot more supply right now, it doesn't sound like the kind of supply to talk about that kind of testing. And that brings me to one of the things I also wanted to really, really mention, to kind of like piggyback on Ed Case, is that, to me, Hawaii citizens should be screening, and writing letters and doing whatever we can to our federal representatives to see what they can do to push at the federal level to require negative testing before travelers get on the plane. It's just so much more problematic to think about what you're going to do with the people that didn't follow that advice. quarantine them when they don't want to be. I mean, what do? You imprison them? It's just so much more risky. But I think even that, you have to understand that within 72 hours, great. Well, they still could catch it on the way, to Hawaii and still spread it. So there still probably will be some cases, even if we take those highest precautions. I mean, I would love to see if the FAA or the airlines or whoever needs to make the rules required it for all flights, and then I think we would feel a little bit more comfortable that travelers are not going to catch it from other travelers while flying. But that sounds pretty unlikely to me. So I think there's still a possibility, even if those things happen, that there are going to be some cases that come into Hawaii, and we need to be prepared to deal with those. So that is one thing for sure. I want to get out to your viewers. I think we should all really, really be trying to reach out to our federal representatives to say, this has to happen. I mean, there has to be some way to require the testing before coming to Hawaii. And probably we should be partnering with Alaska, Guam, Puerto Rico, American Samoa, all the places that have, most of the people arrive by airplane to put that requirement in, because the whole dealing with quarantine afterwards just sounds like such a problematic situation and costly. I mean, even if we were saying, oh, we fly right back home, who pays for that? I think that's just sounds very difficult to me.
Right.
Well, yeah, I think it needs to really start with our governor, the mayors, the county councils. I think all the legislative bodies and the administrative bodies within the state needs to come out, I believe, with a very loud, a strong joint multi-jurisdictional resolution to our federal leaders and to our president, saying that this is what we all believe. But, I think the sense I get from the state is that, the testing is really not a priority, I think. And we've heard that time and time again, that, testing is a snapshot in time. The most important thing we can do right now is social distancing. I disagree. I think the test is, and I've heard it from everyone else around the country, in fact, around the world, that testing is the answer. And yes, it's not 100%. We know we're not going to get every single person that tests negative. They could possibly be positive later. We understand that. But the risk would be limited significantly if we had this testing prior to getting on an airplane. And I agree. I think that people got to do a massive letter writing campaign, but it's got to start with the leadership, in my opinion. That's where it needs to start. And I'm hoping that this gets through. And Ed Case, gave us some promising news last night, but that's all going to take time. And it's going to happen after we get a pretty good dose of visitors coming into Hawaii in the next few months.
Right. I was reading a Civil Beat article about Sarah Park, and I know a lot of people express frustration about Bruce Anderson and Sarah Park. I get the impression from her that she doesn't feel like it's her job to make the policy. She feels like it's her job to deal with whatever people make the policy be. And I heard Charlie throw out that I think there's a proposal, I guess, to test 1 in 20 people. Mm-hmm. I agree with you. That sounds like we're just accepting that there will be some cases, and we're going to use that as a way to do surveillance. But yeah, I have a hard time imagining selling that to the people of Hawaii. It's like, yeah, this sounds good. I mean, it's better than nothing, but I don't think anyone is going to hear that and think like, oh, great. Okay, let's open it up. That being said, I do try to keep in mind that, the economic realities for my patients and for a lot of people are different than for me. And that, there is some desperation, I think, for other people more than what I feel personally. So I just always try to keep that in mind too.
I think for myself, and, we've discussed this before, again, with my brother, if there was no vaccine like we have now, we have no vaccine.
Right.
But if this virus was not as devastating, because we've seen how, if it was first bridged as seniors, high risk, pre-existing medical condition, high risk, right? Then it started to morph into younger patients, no conditions, getting nailed, getting blasted right between the eyes. So I think, if this virus wasn't so damaging, I think, we could, I don't want to say outrun it, but we could probably bear it and let the thing run its course. But nobody knows for sure, because I'm pretty sure the ones who thought they were healthy, they got nailed, thought they could outrun it, but they couldn't. So, and until such time they put out some kind of medical report that tells us how it's acting. Because, I guess you heard one of the questions when we had Dr. Carroll on is, through his studies, do you see it mutating into like a super strain? And he started to explain all the different degrees of the SARS and the virus in itself. Well, when you get into language like that, for us who are not doctors, it can be kind of overwhelming, because all we equate to is death. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's that word death. I mean, just tell me death. Don't give me percentages. Don't give me SARS, MARS, CARS, whatever. Just equate death. And I think the second part of it is the messaging that needs to be put out there. How do we handle these things? And and that's the reason why we brought you on. It's medical professionals like you that we got to rely on, because when you got your back against the wall, hey, call a doc, call somebody that get a PhD at the end of their name, that can probably make sense of this thing. Because right now, even though we've been in it for 3 months, it's still like virgin territory, man. And everything seems to be popping up. One day, we look at it now. Okay, Florida is a prime example about how those cases are popping up now in Florida. And nobody knows. Remember when they had that big break? They're not saying how many people are affected from that break time, but the numbers are it's crazy, crazy.
Right. I do somewhat feel like, well, there are young people that are affected, and it's certainly scary what has come out about the kind of Kawasaki's-like disease in the pediatric population. But like you mentioned, the highest risk are the elderly, over 70, over 80. I think over 80, maybe a quarter of them will die from the disease if they get it. I do somewhat feel like, all right, if that's what we're gonna, if we're gonna open up the economy, and we're going to forego testing, then you have to be honest that you're basically saying that we're willing to risk those people's lives. And I haven't heard anybody say it. I haven't heard any politician say it. And, I don't think it would be popular, but I guess I feel like that sort of just needs to be acknowledged. If the economy was going down the tubes, maybe that is an acceptable loss, but it certainly does not feel like an acceptable loss to most people right now.
There's the implied and the express, and although they're not saying that's an acceptable risk, their actions are obviously saying that it is, that in fact, and to some people agree, and some people think that we are at that point that more people will die from starvation if they don't get back to work than they will from the virus if we continue with the lockdown. And as we see more things open up, we will see more numbers. I'm trying to get from our government leaders is, what is that threshold? At what point do we say oops and shut everything back down? No one's going to give that number, and no one knows what that number will be. I'm just curious, based on the asymptomatic, pre-symptomatic, and I think I agree, I'd rather use the pre-symptomatic, because we know that 40% nationally of people that test positive were asymptomatic at the time of the test. I don't know what the percentage is of those. I think you gave the number that eventually got symptoms, but what do you think the actual number for Kauai would be? Is there any way to figure that out based on our population, based on the percentages, and based on the fact that we did very limited testing? Do you think our numbers are in the ballpark, the numbers that are there, the 21 positive cases, or you think it is more?
I'm not sure. That's a very difficult question to answer. I'm not sure if there is an answer for that. you hit on something that I did want to mention. I did get some figures from the Department of Health and about how much testing we did. And Kauai per capita tested, we were at 2.9% people were tested per capita on Kauai, which is a little higher than 2.8% on Oahu. Maui and Hawaii counties were 3.5 and 4.7% based on the numbers that I got. So we didn't, horribly under test compared to other areas in Hawaii, just to, throw that out. To try to answer your question, I think there's so many other factors involved that make it difficult. For example, I think the news came out about the suicides on Kauai. So we had these four relatively young people who committed suicide during this pandemic. Now, it's hard to know what to make of those numbers until the year is done. They could just be outliers. But when you start to see other effects, we had no fatalities from COVID-19 on Kauai, and then we have these suicides. So I think there are factors like that would start to push people to change their way of thinking about a complete shutdown like how we've had so far. But if you're talking about the numbers, 21 is hardly anything, and that caused the shutdown. So I don't think it would take much for people to feel like we needed to do that again. And I know Josh Green mentioned, that would just be horrible. But it sounds to me like unless we do this testing before people get here and have a very, robust testing protocol, it sounds like we're accepting that that's what we're going to do. We're going to have to turn on these measures, at times when there's a surge, and then maybe we relax them again, which I don't think anybody is keen on doing. I know he talked about it being devastating. It might be devastating economically. I mean, personally, I feel like Kauai kind of gets it. My feeling is that because of Iniki, and I remember Dr. Jerry Young pointed this out, it feels like Iniki. I wasn't here for Iniki, but I think Kauai as an island sort of gets how you have to make sacrifices when there are disasters. So I think people here probably get it more than other areas in the United States, and maybe probably more than other areas in Hawaii. So I think we probably could weather it better than other areas. But I don't have a number for you, Mel. But 21 is low to me, so I don't think it would take much for people to think that another shutdown has to happen if we do open things up.
Yeah, I think, the difference between the hurricane and this one is the pandemic is statewide. I think the resources statewide have been tapped. It's not just Kauai. Kauai, we had the benefit of Oahu coming over and helping us out, people from all over the state coming over, helping out with cleanup and security and all of that. The military obviously was a huge benefit during the hurricane. So I think, that's the one huge difference. And my concern is the resources. You have limited medical resources in the state, and Kauai and this more than we do, is Kauai's resources very minimal if we should get some major spikes. And if it's a statewide, if the visitor industry, without this testing protocol that is being talked about, the visitors could in fact tap out our resources. And that is my biggest fear is for those that cannot beat this virus and needs to be in a hospital, needs to be on a ventilator. We don't have that many resources available. And I think that's everybody's concern.
Right, for sure. I mean, we certainly feel more prepared now, if there's another surge than we were when this first thing happened. And we have tried to, put in place protocols to prepare for these situations. You reminded me of something I did want to mention earlier. Another project we worked on with the Kauai District Health Office is to go out weekly to all the beach parks, the five county beach parks where they're permitting the unsheltered people. So reaching out there and doing screenings there too, verbally, and then we have the ability to do testing over there too. So that's another thing just to try to be prepared. But I agree with you. We should be concerned, and that's what we're trying to prepare for. What is the outcome going to be when we open up tourism, and how can we be best prepared for that situation? Because there probably will be some more cases that come through.
I think what's happening also, when we have countries like South Korea, right? That's in the limelight.
Right.
They tout themselves, and nobody can disagree with them. They tout themselves as having probably the best contact tracing investigators on the planet, because when you're talking about like 1,000 cases, they hunt everybody down and bingo. I mean, they're on it, right? And
Right.
they never close anything down. So I think what's happening is when you get stories like that, or like Sweden, they remain open. They get low number counts, but yet they don't talk too much about the senior homes in Sweden, how much deaths they had. They had probably one of the highest number counts in the senior homes, but they don't bring it out. So I think that, when some of us on Kauai start comparing to these other areas, I think even in Hawaii, I think it starts from the top. It starts from the DOH. They're hiring 300 more contact tracers, right? When you hear stuff like that, on one hand, well, it's good. On the second hand, it's bad because they're saying that, hey, we got to call in reinforcements. That's the image you put in somebody's head that, oh boy, we were caught flat-footed, therefore we're calling in the reinforcements. And when you use numbers in the hundreds, it makes it even sound worse. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one we got to cope with. And second, I wanted to also put out, someone said, oh, Kauai had a new case. So I think they're talking about that case that was reclassified. It was a full case, but added it on. It was reclassified. So no, we didn't have a new case. So I just wanted to make sure of that.
Yeah, I think that one was sort of removed and then returned, if I'm correct on that one.
So when it's things like that, Mel and I were just laughing about it the other day because your objective is you're trying to get the confidence of the people to follow your lead, and yet when you're doing stuff like this, it's like, who the hell wants to follow somebody that using one calculator that they got by turning in a couple of box tops from your Cocoa Krispies cereal, something like that. Who the hell wants to follow that? It's crazy. It's crazy.
Right. Well, I mean, like I said, that no test is perfect. So there are gonna, when you're looking at hundreds and there's a few, that's gonna happen. I guess in my mind, I was kind of like chuckling to myself. So wait, is someone else is somewhere, some other location being like, no, that's yours. And we're like, no, that's yours. No, that's yours. But
that's what happened. That's what happened in the Maui case where, the Lanai case. We know, hey, we don't count it for Lanai. He was in Maui. Okay, we take it. And we know that guy was in Honolulu at the time. It's again, it's nobody wants the number. No island wants the number. But, the people are, all we are asking for is just be honest and transparent, and it was never disclosed. And maybe you know this, Doc, but it was never disclosed to the public with that one that they added on a couple of days ago, if it was the same one that was removed a week or so ago. It was never disclosed that. I mean, I don't know if it's the same person. We don't know. I was trying to get it from Lieutenant Governor Green. Like, is there an issue with the test? I mean, how many others may have been faulty, and how do we know which ones we're testing? Are we redoing every test? Because remember the first death in Hawaii, the unfortunate death, that they told us that the test came back inconclusive, and then after they before a day or two before he died, the test came back positive, and then after the person died, they redid the test and it was negative. And I understand it was early on, but how do we know? And that's the hardest part for us is we expect transparency that, hey, you know what, if it is this last one, at what point in the last 3 months did this one that was added, when did that one happen, at what point? And Charlie's very frustrated about the failure to tell us where these cases are popping up, if in fact there are any clusters, or to let us know the general area or where the person went, if he was at a hotel, if he was at a restaurant, if he was at a supermarket, and the information that's being passed on to the public is very, very, very minimal.
Right.
And we've been harping on this for 3 months. We've spoken to every legislator on the COVID task force, and nothing has changed since. So I guess that's just one of the limiting factors we got to deal with as the public, and just wait.
Yeah, well, go ahead, Uncle Charlie.
Yeah, as you said, you saw Ed Case last night, and I think it was a real important point that he did bring up, and that is Monday is going to introduce a resolution, I guess, or a bill in Congress to direct the Federal Department of Health because the FAA said that it's not in their rules about pre-testing before you get on a flight. Because we knew Mel hit the nail right on the head. He knew from way before the airlines don't want to participate in making sure that before you get on their plane, you got pre-tested. They don't want to make it their responsibility. So we were using Alaska as a comparison. But last night we found out Alaska's in the same boat. They haven't gotten that approval yet. So they're in the same boat. Yet they'll probably get theirs undone easier because of the smaller, they get most of their travelers coming off of ships. So probably get easier that way. But I think, what we all need to do, and I think would be helpful, I mean, it's just a suggestion. I don't know, when you have your Thursday group, is having the doctors of your group maybe write into the federal level, because Monday he's going to introduce that resolution or that bill in Congress. Because if it flies, it will go in the hand of the DOH that can actually make the rules, similar to what they did with TSA when they started to say, okay, take off your shoes. Why? Because you had on shoe bomber. Surprisingly, the guy that had the bomb in his Beverly's, they don't make us take off our Beverly's. And we're lucky about that, right? So, it's all of these kind of things, but every little thing that we can do will help. Do you agree?
Oh yeah, we talked about it on Thursday. I mean, we didn't make a letter. I think we all sort of feel like if we tell Dr. Berryman, District Health Office, talks to the state, State Department of Health, but it's a good point. Yeah, it would be probably have more weight if we put it in writing and as a group.
Because that thing just came out last night from Ed Case, and even we did it. So it was like, okay.
Right, I didn't either. I mean, I know Dr. Berryman had suggested that, other places like countries that require certain vaccinations, they require it from the airlines. So the airlines have to enforce it. But it sounds like we may or may not be able to do that. But I mean, I think that's another part of it too. Is like if you work for an airline or if you're, connections at Hawaiian Airlines, we should be talking to them too, about that. What can you do to help get this requirement in place and enforce it?
Yep.
Are you? I mean, I think you probably get your information the same way we do, but I'm trying to understand this guy's question. He's just asking about the new cases reported in the past few days. We had the 9 today, and I guess it was 6 yesterday. Is that cause for concern? Is that something that we should be worried about? That because we hadn't seen a number like that in a while. Is that because of the Memorial Day weekend? I mean, and no one knows this, but I'm just trying to figure out, what's causing those numbers. Because again, we don't know, and they won't tell us if it's a cluster. 9 in a day seems it's a pretty interesting number, where we've been getting ones and zeros and ones and ones and 2, and then we get a 6 and then a 9. You think we'll see a higher increase in the next few days?
I'll just have to admit that, I focused on Kauai, like the Kauai case, I wanted to find out. The other ones, I didn't try to take it further to find out the nature of those ones. I did want to say about the skepticism with testing. I don't know the details about how this has played out with removing and then putting back a case. I suspected that it might have to do with antibody testing. So now that we have these antibody tests, you could test someone later, presuming they survive. And then if they have the antibody, then you knew that they did have COVID. So like I had a patient who was a paramedic who asked me to test that on him because he was hospitalized around the beginning of the pandemic. They tested him for everything. And he tested positive for like rhinovirus, which is a really usually benign virus. But he was pretty sick. He had pneumonia and had to stay in the hospital for a few days. And he was negative on antibody testing too. But I'd imagine maybe that's the scenario that's clarifying some of these now. And maybe they just did a group together, but I don't know for sure. So I don't want to say that that's the answer. I know Josh Green mentioned this too, but another thing I hear a lot in the community is that, well, maybe we had COVID-19 earlier, like in January, when a lot of people had the flu. Almost my whole high school soccer team had the flu at some point during the month of January, or flu-like symptoms, I should say. But I personally know several of them tested positive for the flu. But I think you guys probably heard that Hawaii Pacific Health offered that testing to their employees. And it's been like, I think it was about 3,800 employees that were tested, and less than 0.5% are positive. So we have to take that to mean that the Hawaii population as a whole is probably COVID-19 naive and susceptible to the disease.
Yeah, yeah.
I think Dr. Green, or Lieutenant Governor Green, calls it, and many others call it, a very low viral load. The viral load here in Hawaii is very low, and that's why they feel comfortable with starting to open things up gradually. But again, that can all change with just one plane. I mean, that's what I think the biggest fear is. And if we can close that door, if we can complete the testing requirement, then I think everyone would feel a whole lot more comfortable. I know I would, and I know a lot of others would too, knowing that there is still a risk, but the risk I think would be a manageable risk if we tested everybody getting on a plane before they got here. And I'm hoping that will happen at some point. I really do.
Right. Well, I think the other thing that we're hoping is that we'll know more what these antibodies mean in the long term. So I think the other part we have to keep in mind is this is all new, so the things that were done in the beginning, we weren't sure how reliable they were, and we're finding out day by day how reliable these tests were and are. Antibody tests, we know something about them. We think they probably convey immunity, at least for a few years, but we don't know for sure yet. But I think there's also a hope that, if you're antibody positive, then you shouldn't be susceptible. And at some point, people would be able to get sort of like a travel visa or something based on antibodies, but we just don't know that reliably enough yet to be, giving someone a pass for having the antibody. And you probably heard this too, that you can have the antibody and still be infectious at the same time. So anybody who has the antibody, we're supposed to test them with that nasal swab as well to make sure that they actually cleared the infection.
Well, Dr. Lieutenant Governor Green did say, and he kind of went out on a limb, and I think you might have heard that I alluded to the fact of the Gold Star process that most of us who travel a lot need by a certain date. All travelers will have to get that Gold Star from TSA, right? So we talked about the program. And he kind of alluded to the fact that, he can't say much, but there is a program in the works that kind of follows that methodology that we're going to have get something on a government issued so we can show that we can travel because I guess we're free of the virus. But it's interesting that you say that, even if you test positive for antibodies and you still can get you still can get the virus. It sounds as if, like how when we take the flu shot and we still get sick.
Right.
That's what it sounds like. Is that what you're referring to?
Well, the flu shot, you still get sick. You could still get sick because you get something that's not actually flu, another virus. You also could still get sick because you do get the flu. And you probably heard the flu is really the scary virus out there because it can do all this recombination. I think Dr. O'Carroll mentioned that too. It morphs into, different forms of itself. And so each year, the seasonal flu vaccine is a educated guess as which strains are going to become prominent. But I think particularly because Hawaii has traffic from everywhere, our flu shot might not, hit the strains that end up coming to Hawaii. There's also influenza A and influenza B, so some people still do get the flu, and some people just get viruses that aren't the flu. I guess what I mean is that people with the antibody for COVID-19, we just don't know if they're actually immune and how long they will be immune for. We think they are probably immune, but I think you probably heard, like in Korea, there were some people that still tested positive for the active virus while they had the antibody. So that's what I mean, is that you can be antibody positive and you might still be able to transmit the disease to another person. So there's two concerns there. We don't know if the antibody means you're immune for any good period of time. And we also think it's possible to be antibody positive and still transmit the virus. That being said, the test that detects the active virus, that nasal swab, it can detect dead virus particles that are still in your body. So I think that's what the conclusion was in Korea, that some of those people were antibody positive and virus positive, but it was probably like dead virus that was still in their system, and they probably weren't truly infectious at that time. But it's still a concern, you know, and I think that's one of those things. It just takes time. You know, if you're looking at first cases in January, well, we're only 6 months out. So even if you had somebody who got antibodies in January, you know, we only have 6 months of possible experience to test whether they're immune. So we don't know when that would, you know, if it's, well, I think it's an ethical problem to try to reinfect them as well, just to test it. But I think they're probably trying to do animal testing and things.
Well, that's the necessary evil. I mean, you got to go through this process. You know, it seems like it's been forever, but you know, think about it. You know, it's been 3 months, 6 months since January, but we got to go through this process. And then at some point, looking at all the data of all the patients and all the positives and all the negatives, at some point we'll figure this out. But that's the part about a brand new virus that you just don't know.
Right.
And what is refreshing, I gotta say, and Doc, thanks again. I know we went beyond the time, but I just want to say thank you for being on the show. But what's refreshing is the doctors we've been bringing on, yourself, Dr. O'Carroll, been consistent with the information, and I think the public appreciates that.
Yes.
A lot of misinformation floating around the internet. I call it Google University and the University of Twitter. A lot of people get their information from that, and it goes viral. So we really appreciate you coming on, and just, I love it, man. Frank, honest, straight, and the people can decide what they want to decide. But very informative. I appreciate, Doc. And I don't know if you have your Facebook running. If you're not, go back and check out the comments. A lot of good comments. A lot of friends and family and people that you've treated that are on this call. So thank you so much, man.
Yeah.
Well, thank you too. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Uncle Charlie.
Well, you know, I just did want to say that, you know, right now, you know, having people like yourself, doctors like yourself on the front line, you know, I really appreciate that. You know, you're not afraid to tackle this thing, because I think the fear that I have, and, you know, we talk about the data. Well, you can have all the data you want, unless you know what you're analyzing and what that information means. It's just numbers. It's just numbers. And so for the layperson, we always take the higher the number, it must be really bad. I mean, that's the easiest way to do it. So when you got 2 days in a row that you have a spike, at what point do we consider it probably a major spike? Because if you get 9, average person say, if you had 40, yeah, you worried, or you had 50. But if you have a combination of 9 every day, that kind of tells you something. So the next question I would be asking is, where's it coming from? Where's it coming from? Before, they would tell us if it's travel related or not. They're not even doing that now. They're just popping the number up. So we don't know. But I think, you know, people in your doctors in your position that do meet and that have access more readily available than, say, the average person like myself or Mel. You know, we get our information by really digging hard. And, you know, sometimes we have people on the inside, they'll drop a line because it's something that we need to cover. So I think my word of hope is that, aside from writing to our federal team up in Washington, DC, is like individuals like you that have a group that's basically a HUI that's put together. It sounds like you guys get access to Dr. Berman, and, you know, just try to find out as much as you can. And, you know, anytime you got, you know, the invitation is always open, Doc. Come back on. You can share that information, you know, whatever you want to share. We can get the word out, because I think people who have joined us already know that whatever we're going to give the raw information, and if they can do whatever they want to do with it. We're not going to give them no fake BS. So I want to thank you very, very much.
Right. Oh, well, I just want to thank you guys too for having me on, giving me this opportunity. Just like you guys were saying, I think we're in this new era where misinformation is just everywhere, and this is too important of a situation to have misinformation, you know, undermining the efforts to control this disease and get everything back on track. You have a really, to me, this is a great, interesting, you know, forum, you know, and you guys have a lot of heavy hitters. So I guess I was kind of like, well, gosh, I hope I can provide some useful information. I feel like I'm such a little guy compared to the people who you've had on here. So really, thank you for having me on. Yeah, we'll keep in touch. And I really just want the people on Kauai to know that, you know, it's not like you're out here alone. You know, the doctors on Kauai are doing what we can, and, you know, really, really trying to think about this and be smart about how we use our resources and, you know, advocate for the safety of our community. So I just wanted to get that message out there. And I know people have felt a lot of, you know, I guess, maybe not negative, but hesitation about the Department of Health, Bruce Anderson and Sarah Park. But I think our experience with Dr. Berriman has been great. And I think she's willing to have these kind of conversations too. So, you know, if things come up in the future, if there's another surge, you know, I really enjoyed working with her. So I think we can feel good about the Kauai District Health Office and how we're going to approach the situation if that happens again. So that's the main thing I wanted to get out there. But really, really, thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Berriman, I believe, is the only one in that Department of Health right now that's actually worked through a pandemic prior to this one. I think she's the only one that has actual pandemic experience. We're trying to get her on the show, and I don't know if I hope she's not afraid to come on the show, but we'd love to have her on. And we've put out the invitation to the mayor's office to try to get her on, and we'll follow up with that next week. We really want to get her on. And as far as the power hitters, people say, Mel, how the hell you guys get all these power hitters? Very simple. We just asked. and I gotta say, we're struggling to get people on now. They want to come on. People want to come on. So it's a great format, and it's a great way to get good information out. And we hope to continue this as long as we can. So, but again, and you definitely fit the bill. You're right there, buddy. You are now officially
a heavy hitter.
Hey, Kirk, you got to get a show. You got to get a new shirt. I survived the Mel and Charlie show. That's the new shirt.
I thought you were going to say I was officially an Okole Puka.
No. No.
Nah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
well,
Charles.
Yeah, and again, I'd like to say to all the viewers, thank you again for sending in your comments. And you know, we try to get to them, and we try to break it in through a conversation. So hopefully we can answer. But just know one thing, that it's always our intention to have the best interest of the people that we love, and that is you, Kauai. But because this show has gone viral throughout the United States and throughout the state of Hawaii, we love all of you. So if you're from Kauai, if you're from Montana, you're from Florida, and you're watching, we love you, and that's why we do what we do. And we're going to keep on doing it. At some point, Mel and I, we're going to transition into another discussion, because I think we beat COVID until we beat the crap out of it. You know what I mean? I don't know how much more you can beat it up, but you know, we've done pretty much. And someone had suggested that, you know, maybe we try to get Dr. Berriman on with us, and we'll try. We'll discuss it after. But I just want to thank all the viewers. And again, just so the viewers know that without people like Dr. Kapono Chong-Hanssen and the rest of the team that came on to share their mana'o with us, you know, we still would be in the dark. But it was something that was, inception was done by Mel, and Mel wanted to continue this, and I joined him, and I'm so grateful that he asked me to be his co-host, and that we can take this forward. So we'll continue doing this. Thanks, Mel.
Thank you, Charles. And again, thanks, Doc. I will say this, you know, we were chatting about before we brought the doctor on, we were chatting about the congregations and the protests and all of these events that are bringing people, you know, they're forgetting about social distancing and wearing their masks. And listen, regardless of what happens, regardless of tourists coming, regardless of what the heck happens, and I've said this so many times, practice your individual responsibility. Stay 6 feet away from people, especially tourists. And for your hotel employee workers, you know, we'll be having that discussion next week at some point. But practice the individual responsibility. Stay at home when you don't have to go out. Wear a mask when you're out in the public, and keep your distance. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face like I did about 1,000 times tonight. So did the doctor. So did Dr. Okay. They all do. But listen, take care of yourselves and take care of your ohana and make sure that you practice the hygiene, and you're gonna be okay. You know, we just gotta take care of ourselves, and we'll be okay. So with that, thank you again, Charles. Tomorrow night is Sunday, so we take a night off. On Monday at 7 o'clock, we will have Nick and Nate Herbig. For those of you that don't know, Kawhi boys that went on. One is a Super Bowl champion playing for the Philadelphia Eagles. The brother is at the University of Wisconsin. So we're gonna have it'll be a fun, relaxed discussion how COVID affected the college athletes and the professional athletes. And then Tuesday, Charles, I have it written down.
Brian Miyamoto, the president of the Hawaii Farm Bureau, will be on Tuesday with us to talk about all the good things they've been doing, because a lot of the farms pretty much they couldn't do anything with their produce because all the hotels shut down. So what they did is they collected all their produce and they've been giving it away to many different drive-through to help the needy. Then on Wednesday, we have Dr. Tony Dripkowski from Doctors of Waikiki. He's coming on. Then hopefully on Thursday, we'll have the head of the Hawaii Hotel Workers Union, Eric Gill, to talk about the safety factors of getting all the hotel employees safe in that environment, because they are now going to be the frontline workers when they go back to the hotels. So that's what we got lined up.
And then Friday, we are hoping to get Mayor Kawakami on. They reached out last night. We're trying to plug them in for Friday or Saturday. We'll get that done. So exciting week next week.
Yes.
Hope you guys can join us again tomorrow night. No show. We're kicking back tomorrow night. We'll be back Monday at 7 o'clock with the Herbigs. Have a good night. You guys stay safe. God bless. And remember, we love you guys. Aloha, everybody. Thanks, Doc.
Aloha.
We'll see you on the road, buddy.
Thank you.
Aloha.